The new Genshin Impact event, Mutual Security Enhancing Simulation, is gonna start in 2 days, and I thought to myself, because I haven't talked about it just yet, let's take a look at the new event-exclusive 4-star bow that we're gonna have the chance to get while the event is running. This one goes by the name Cloudforged because I personally think this bow is very interesting for specific characters. Now, before we jump into the weapon itself, let's quickly talk about the event from which you're gonna get the weapon, that being the Mutual Security Enhancing Simulation, let's say that 3 times fast, which is going to start in 2 days on the 7th of June 2024. Just like with most other events, in order to be able to participate, you will have to have the Prologue Archon Quest Act 3 Song of Dragon and Freedom done, so basically if you've played the game for more than 3 minutes, you should be able to go through the quest, even though ideally you want to be done with the Fontaine Archon Quest in order to be in the loop when it comes to the whole story premise. Now, when it comes to the event itself, I'm not going to say all too much because they did showcase that in the special program for 4.7. It's going to be kind of like a tower offense / tower defense type of game mode where on the one hand you're going to assault an enemy defense structure where you can spawn different units that counter other units, so it's kind of like a rock, paper, scissors thing, a bit of a strategy game. Whereas on the other side you'll defend a position while enemies attack from different sides, and then you're going to spawn defensive structures and units to counter those incoming attack waves. So much for the event, and as always, big kisses if you could maybe spare a like because it helps the channel big time with the algorithm, so cheers for that. And now let's finally talk about the actual topic of today's video, which would be the Cloudforged, the new bow that comes with this event. First of all, just like with any other event-exclusive 4-star weapons in the game, you will only have this one chance to get the bow during this event, and it will never come back in the future. So if you don't get it now, you're not gonna get it at all. As for what the bow does, its stats and all those kind of shenanigans, it looks pretty interesting. At level 90, the Cloudforged bow is gonna have a base attack of 510. This is already pretty nice for a 4-star weapon, and as a substat, it's gonna have Elemental Mastery coming in at 165 at max level. First of all, just looking at the base stats, it's in line with the Stringless, which also has 510 attack and 165 Elemental Mastery, as well as the Windblume Ode, which also features the same stats. Now, let's look into the passive ability and see what this bow can do, and if or if not, it might actually have the edge over its 2 competitors on specific characters. Alright, so the Cloudforged has a really interesting effect. After elemental energy is decreased, the equipping character's elemental mastery will increase by 40 for 18 seconds with a maximum of 2 stacks. This in and of itself is pretty interesting already, because with 18 seconds it has quite the long duration and it can have 2 stacks, so I think this bow is made for those type of characters who can reduce their elemental energy twice in this time frame for an additional plus 80 elemental mastery, and that is at refinement rank 1. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that the resources that we need to refine this bow further will also be obtainable from the accompanying event, so we're theoretically looking at a way bigger buff in elemental mastery from the effect than just 80. So, how does the Cloudforged stack up to its 2 competitors? The Stringless is a gacha 4-star weapon and it's also featured on the current banner, and in general, the Stringless is a pretty strong 4-star bow because of its universal passive ability that increases elemental skill and elemental burst damage. So on most bow characters on or off field, the Stringless is probably still going to be your number 1 choice. As for the Windblume, this one is also an event exclusive, so if you didn't get it back in the day, then, well, you don't need to worry about it anyway. However, should you have it, then what it does is, after using an elemental skill, you receive a boon, and that will give you more attack for a very short period of time. Now, all in all, in the game as we stand right now, most bow characters don't really care all that much about elemental mastery, and if you equip them with one of these EM bows, then I think the Stringless is still going to be your number 1 choice on most of them because of the elemental steel and elemental burst buff, or should those characters scale with attack, then the Windblume might also be a nice option should you have this. So does that mean that the Cloudforged is a bad bow? Well, if you ask me, I would say no. First of all, it has solid base stats, and in case you don't have a fancy 5-star bow, or you don't want to pull on the weapon banner and therefore don't get like the Stringless or any other 4-star gacha, then yeah, the Cloudforged is a nice bow. Sure, it doesn't give you attack, it doesn't give you crit rate, it quote-unquote just gives you elemental mastery, but then again, if you have Elemental Mastery on your weapon, that gives you more flexibility with your artifact set, because most characters at least want to have some degree of EM due to their reaction teams to benefit from more reaction damage. And if your weapon gives that to you, then you don't have to reroll your artifacts all that much to get that EM substat. No, those characters that are going to be really interested in the Cloudforged are those that want more Elemental Mastery, because with its passive skill, you don't just get 165, you get up to 80 more at Refinement Rank 1, so this bow has the potential to give you a whole chunk of EM for those that want it. But then the question remains, Blacky, which characters want all that much EM? So how about we look into that right now? As it stands right now, I could imagine that Tighnari, being a Dendro character, and Dendro characters usually liking a bit more EM, could make a decent use of this weapon. Also, and this is probably one of the best characters with this weapon, would be Venti, should you have him, because he is a bow character and because his elemental burst is not all that costly, so you're potentially going to be able to cast that twice in the 18-second time frame to get, the 2 stacks of the passive effect, and since he is an Anemo character, he's supposed to trigger tons of swirl reactions that, as we all know, scale very well with Elemental Mastery. Same thing goes for Faruzan, even though she's not that much of a swirler. Being an Anemo character, she can naturally swirl, and having more Elemental Mastery would help her too. Another option that I could potentially see with this bow, please don't call me crazy, would be Yoimiya. Now, you might be wondering why Yoimiya, right? She's an on-field DPS, she wants to have a lot of attack. Why in tarnation would you give this bow to her instead of the stringless? And the simple answer is, if you have the stringless, maybe even at higher refinement rank, probably not at all. But especially when you play Yoimiya in a melt or in a vaporized team where there is going to be some reaction damage going on, then you want also the main DPS to have some sort of Elemental Mastery to benefit from more reaction damage. Especially because Yoimiya is one of the very, very few characters in the game that wants to use the Shimenawa artifact set, which has the effect that it drains your elemental energy, so you're probably going to have no problem at all getting those stacks for the passive skill of the bow. So yeah, as 4-star option for Yoimiya in a reaction team, I could definitely see the Cloudforged being a thing. And then finally, let's also quickly talk about everybody's favorite 4-star bow user, Fischl, who, if you use her in a Dendro team, in a Quicken team, in a Hyperbloom, whatever you want to use her in, there, of course, she will trigger Dendro reactions, and since Dendro reactions are so good with higher Elemental Mastery, you want to make sure that Fischl has quite some of that, and if you ask me, the Cloudforged can deliver here. By the way, exactly the same also goes for Stethos, who's also an Electro character, not off-field but therefore on-field. If you play him in a Dendro team, if he triggers Dendro reactions, then yes, he also wants Elemental Mastery, and this bow can help with that. And before we wrap the video up for today, there is another character that I want to talk about, and that is Emilie, where right now I'm not exactly sure if there's any official information out yet regarding which weapon type she's going to be, but if she were to be a bow character, and we already know she is a Dendro character, I could imagine that Elemental Mastery might be a good idea on her. I mean, this is very much speculative, we don't have any info officially on that yet, but I think it's a nice thing to keep in mind. So yeah, what do you think about the new bow? Will you get it? Are you excited? Which characters are you going to use it on? Or do you think, well, this one is a definite skip for me? Let me know in the comments down below. I hope to see you guys in the next one. And until then, as always, travel smart.